Biden administration has done something very dangerous. When Donald Trump was president, the US froze Iranian money kept overseas to punish it for working to make a nuclear bomb. And this is important because Iran's a terrorist state. You know, it said it wants to wipe out Israel, for instance. But Joe Biden, President Biden, has just agreed to give back to Iran $6 billion American, that's nearly 10 billion Australian, 10 billion, in exchange for 5 Americans that Iran has, well, essentially kept hostage. Biden's spokesman on security issues struggled to explain it yesterday.
I know that you dispute that this is a ransom payment. Obviously, many critics of this agreement say that it is just that. So, in effect, they suggest it's $1 billion per American individual being released. So how is this not incentivizing bad actors and rogue regimes like Iran in the future to detain more Americans?
Bad actors like Iran and like Mr. Putin in Russia don't need any incentive to continue to look for ways to wrongfully detain Americans. It's been happening a long, long time, and we have to accept the reality that it could happen again in the future.
It's incredible. A $2 billion Australian per hostage ransom is not an incentive, not an ad incentive. The guy's got rocks in his head. Joining me from New York is Ami Horowitz, filmmaker and commentator. Ami Horowitz, thank you so much for your time. America giving $6 billion US, that's nearly 10 billion Australian, to Iran in exchange for 5 American prisoners, hostages really. That seems insane, even if you do accept the US is really giving back Iranian money that was frozen. Why was this deal done?
Yeah, it's crazy on so many levels. Okay, first of all, what happened to the idea of we do not negotiate with terrorists? Don't you remember that concept? That's out the window. This is, look, on a personal level, obviously, if I or one of my family members was kidnapped by a terrorist, of course I would want to do whatever it took to get them back. But you can't create foreign policy based on what I would want personally. You have to do what's best for the country. And what's not best is giving $6 billion to a terrorist regime who's using that money to kill Jews and kill Americans, and frankly, to terrorize Europeans. That is not a good use of funds. And the problem is that, you know, what's incredible to me, first of all, forget about the problems of the $6 billion. The optics, Biden signing this on 9/11 is beyond comprehension. Who is advising this guy? Beyond that, the actual money, you know, it's funny. The Americans, the administration was at pains to say this money will only be used for humanitarian purposes, right? Food and medicine for the Iranian people. They say that over and over again. First of all, they probably don't understand the concept of the fungibility of money, right? If you give money for one purpose, that frees up the money in other pockets for other purposes. But beyond that, the mullahs said the quiet part out loud. They said, I don't care what the Americans said we're going to use money for. We're going to use the money for whatever we see fit. And yet we are still going through with this. Andrew, it's beyond comprehension.
I think it's astonishing. You know, to that point that you made, you know, if you were a hostage, of course, you'd like your country to start spending money to get you out. But the point is, when you're saying to the world, you kidnap an American is worth easy north of $1 billion to your country because America will cough up, you're just inviting more hostage taking around the globe. I mean, it's just this, it just beggars belief. The reaction to this?
The reaction is, okay, first of all, I think you have, like, everything in this country is split down the middle. The people on the right are aghast. The people on the left, they look at you and say, I don't see the problem. It's Iranian money. We're getting back our hostages. We don't have any kind of level of discussion which makes sense, right? I think that's the problem, that you can't sit down with a Democrat and say, this doesn't make any sense on any level. They look at you and say, you're crazy. This makes total sense. There's no point of discussion. So, yeah, look, it all depends on which media you're watching. If you're watching Fox News, you're upset. If you're watching MSNBC, this is great. It's a foreign policy success.
Oh, dear. Look, honestly. Ami, America, look, you've got a gun culture that many Australians find hard to accept. You know, the right to bear arms, though, is in your constitution. So it seems rather a huge move for the governor of New Mexico to suddenly announce that she's banning the carrying of guns around her state's biggest city, Albuquerque. What's prompted that, and can she get away with it?
This is truly astonishing. So what she's saying is it's a public health emergency. Andrew, you get the game? This is all now post-COVID. With COVID, the left understood that we can just say public health emergency and we can circumvent the Constitution of the United States. That's what's going on here. There is absolutely no, and I repeat this again, zero, nada, constitutional reality for a governor of a state to say that you can no longer carry a weapon. Sorry, there's no emergency that can exist that would allow a governor to say, I can now circumvent the U.S. Constitution. That's exactly what she is doing, because she is looking at the precedent of for example, the mask mandate by the U.S. government that was also extra constitutional. She's looking at, for example, the former mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, when she said racism is a public health problem. Therefore, I am now given powers that were not inherent to me as mayor of this city. This is where we're at. And what's to stop somebody from saying, look, if you're on the left, you think the greatest public health emergency that exists is climate change. What's to stop a governor or a mayor to say, look, there's a public health emergency, there's climate change. I will now make unilateral, extra constitutional legislation to stop climate change. There is no end to this. And look, she's also putting herself in a very bad position where the actual law enforcement of her state are saying, we're not going to enforce this. We know this is wrong. We know this is illegal. It's putting her directly in the path of the law enforcement officials of her own state. It's nuts. It's crazy.
And a judge is already stepping in as well, put a temporary freeze on that order. Ami Horowitz, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Always a pleasure.